Hey everyone, this is Dr. Maples. We're here with a very short lecture to talk about some important terminology that we need to understand before we move on to talk about building hypotheses. Oh, I can't wait. That's in our next lecture. But for now, let's talk about some basic ideas that I want you to have on hand as we start thinking about that. Now, the first thing that I want you to think about is the idea of causality. Causality is something that sociologists are always thinking about. How does one thing relate to changes in another? I'll give you some examples of some data that I've collected from my classes in the past. I was really curious about the relationship between students missing classes and how they score on the final. And I collected some data and found that the more classes you missed, the worse you did on the final. Why is that? Well, that's causality. That's thinking about why missing more classes might shape your score on the final. Now, what might that be? Well, think about it this way. If you miss more classes, you probably are getting less exposure to the information. But if you're missing more classes, are you studying to make up for that? Maybe there would be a scenario where you miss a bunch of classes, but you're really good at studying out of class, and so you don't have any problem with it. Maybe you do great on the final because you study. And that's where we're dealing with a caused relationship. But we're going to find out that there's actually another word we're going to use for that in just a moment. Another good example, I found that students who I felt were texting in class a lot more, I had a hypothesis that they're probably scoring lower on the final than other students. So I had a survey and I asked them, do you feel that you regularly text in class? It was a yes or no question. And I found that people who said yes, that they self-admittedly felt that they texted more in class, then I found that they scored lower on the final. It was this really cool relationship between two variables. What might cause that? Well, if you're texting in class, it's almost like being absent because you're not hearing the information, and that correlates to not doing well on the final. Likewise, maybe something like if you're texting, maybe you're also just not focused on the material at all, or maybe you have a really busy life. Maybe that's work saying, "Where are you?" and you're not working on the material to begin with. We don't know. We want to make sure to avoid a common mistake here, though. We want to make sure that we don't think that a relationship between two variables is truly causation. What we really are often thinking about is correlation. Causation means that this causes this. We more cautiously want to think about the word correlation. We think that there's a correlation between this behavior and this behavior. If you miss more classes, you score worse on the final. If you text more in class, you score worse on the final. There's a correlation between those. Now, it doesn't mean that this causes this. In fact, causation is a big mistake that we often make in research, and we want to make sure that we use correlation because a correlation just means that there's a relationship between these. In fact, when we're thinking about causality and correlation, we want to make sure that we understand what's happening because is it plausible that this would influence this? Are these two variables linked in this sense? Does that make sense? Does the time of it make sense? Do we have things backwards that this happens first and this happens second? Or did we get it backwards? Because then that correlation doesn't make much sense. You can't go back in time to cause something. Likewise, is it spurious? And this is why we use correlation rather than causation. Correlation can mean there's a relationship between two variables, but another variable that we didn't study could be causing that. That's part of a spurious relationship. In fact, there's lots of really funny relationships you can find on the internet of things like, ice cream consumption predicting hurricanes. There's a correlation between them statistically, but we know that there's some other weird thing that's happening there. It's not really ice cream consumption. It's kind of like if we go back to the start of the semester and I tried to explain that my students predict the weather. There's a relationship there, but it has nothing to do with my students. It has everything to do with the way that our semester is designed. So think about that. The short of it is avoid using the phrase that this causes this. Let's talk about correlations. There's a relationship between these two things. This correlates with this. It's an important difference. It's a subtle difference, but it's something that you definitely want to make sure as a sociologist that you work towards, using the phrase correlation. Another thing that I want you to think about is how you're measuring things at different levels in our research. Now, we talked a little bit about levels of analyses based on theories. We had micro, meso, and macro theories. Well, that's a little bit related to taking a moment to identify the level at which we're studying our ideas. So let's say that I'm looking at educational attainment. That's great. Educational attainment could be a very sociological variable, but at what level? Are we talking about individual persons? Are we talking about like a rate? Are we talking about county percentage of people who have graduated college or something like that? Or is it high school? Is it college? Is it graduate schools? What are we looking at here? We want to think about at what level we're measuring an idea. And that's where I want to introduce two terms. First off is the unit of analysis. Second is the unit of observation. Now, with unit of analysis, this is where, thinking about your research, at what level are you studying something? This phenomenon that you're interested in, at what level are you studying it? Let's give a good example of this based on some of my past research. I studied cemetery loss amongst old cemeteries in transitional economies. So my unit of analysis is cemeteries that have been basically destroyed. That's my unit of analysis. But where am I looking for those? This is where unit of observation comes in. I'll actually be observing the relationship in specific places. So when I started collecting for data on this study, looking at the unit of analysis of destroyed cemeteries, I collected them from West Virginia cemeteries. That's my unit of observation, and these were in rural areas. For example, they were all in Boone County, West Virginia. It's a very famous county there. So with unit of analysis, we're looking at a basic description of the level. So for example, we could think about a student study. I'm going to study student parking behaviors, not a very sociological question, but hear me out. I'm going to study student parking behaviors and arriving to class on time. My unit of analysis is students who park on their college campus. Okay, fair enough. And my unit of observation, I'm going to collect data from universities in the state of Kentucky. There, I've got unit of analysis is my student who parks on campus. My unit of observation, where I'm actually collecting the data, it's students who park on campuses at Kentucky colleges and universities. There we go. One quick thing on this. Sometimes these are going to be identical. You want to make generalizations about educational attainment and health insurance in rural counties. You can look at rural counties in a particular state. That's your unit of observation, and the county is your unit of analysis. I'm analyzing secondary data on educational attainment and health insurance in rural counties. Again, they've stated their unit of analysis is probably like percentage of the county, and then the unit of observation is the counties themselves. They overlap a lot, but take a moment to think about what level you're looking at. One really common mistake that happens is people get units of analysis confused for individuals versus counties. Try to understand if you're looking truly at individual persons in your data set, or if you're looking at county level data, what we call aggregate data. Now, with individuals, we'll actually get some chances to play with individual data later in the semester, but we'll also see some county level data. And again, you just want to think about at what level you're looking at your data so it makes sense in your papers. One final slide on this short mini lecture. Another thing that a lot of people make the mistake of when they're conducting early research is to think about the level of which that they're studying their material. And this comes into unit of analysis. But with sociologists, we have kind of 5 common levels, and that'll help to inform the unit of analysis that you're thinking of. We start with the individual, then we expand from there to groups of individuals. From groups, we go to organizations, which could have multiple groups and multiple kinds of individuals lumped together. Social phenomena from there, and policies and principles are the biggest ideas. At each level, things get a little bit bigger. And I will say that the textbook has a really great table on page 58 that kind of helps explain this idea. But this gives you a little bit of information about thinking about your unit of analysis going forward. For many of you, you're going to start with individuals, or maybe organizations or social phenomena. You're not going to get a lot of group data, or it may be that you have individuals that you can separate into particular groups, and that'll be group data. But you'll often be looking at organizations or social phenomena, things at like the county level. In fact, the most common data that you'll be using for a lot of your research comes from places like the American Community Survey, which uses counties aggregated from individuals, or occasionally individual data sets like the social survey. Those are your most common ones. If you collect data on your own, though, it might change. So we'll want to think a little bit about that unit of analysis. All right, short mini lecture over. Are you ready for this? In our next lecture, we finally get to one of the most important life skills that you get out of this class, and that's the idea of building a hypothesis. Now, in building a hypothesis, we have to practice it. And if you're going to be good at it, it takes time. So we're going to start with the bare bones of building a hypothesis, of understanding what we're trying to do in building a hypothesis, and what a null hypothesis is, because that may not be an idea you've heard of before. We'll pick up our lecture there. If you have questions, concerns, anything at all, you feel free to write me. Take care. See ya.